Just because you have a signed contract with the seller does not mean that the seller is actually going to show up at closing and transfer the property. If you are buying a home in Connecticut, you need to understand what happens if a seller changes their mind and refuses to close. Because if you don't, it not only can cost you the house, it could cost you thousands of dollars, all because you didn't realize what your options were. Hi, I'm attorney Kishore Kapoor, a residential real estate closing attorney here in the state of Connecticut. And every day I share real life stories about real closings so you can learn from my clients' experiences so you can have a smooth and hopefully stress-free closing. So I'm going to tell you two stories today. We represented a buyer. Buyer was buying a beach house. They thought it was a great investment. They loved it. Great location, you know, good deal on the property. The appraisal went fine. The title search went fine. Everything was going smoothly. This should have been an easy closing. However, when we went to go figure out the numbers with the seller, they realized that they were losing a lot more than they expected. And because of this, they actually refused to close. We had to go out, and I recommended my client to go out and hire another attorney, right? And that attorney was going to go to court and force the seller to sell it if we couldn't come to terms. They sent out a demand letter telling the sellers, this is what we're going to do if you don't close. We're demanding that you close on time, and we're going to execute our rights. They threatened to sue for something called specific performance. And I say it threatened. They were going to if the seller wasn't going to cooperate. But specific performance is a legal action that you can sue a seller to force them to sell you a property as a buyer. It's costly, it's time consuming. But for these clients, this was the right decision. If the seller wasn't going to fix it and close, this didn't make sense. They wanted the property. It made good financial sense for them. So we went back and forth and negotiated, and we ended up settling on a number that both the buyer and the seller agreed to, and we purchased the property and closed, no issues. That's not always the case. Sometimes there's situations where we end up in a situation where the buyer doesn't want to bring a lawsuit, but wants to be reimbursed. So let me tell you another client story. We represented a buyer, found a great house, good neighborhood, everything checked their boxes. We were going through, the seller was a young unmarried couple, and they had gotten in a fight and were splitting up. Well, during that process of buying the house, they reconciled, and then they decided they did not want to sell their house. Now, my client in that situation did not want to force a sale. He wanted his out-of-pocket expenses back. So what we ultimately did is we worked with the other attorney, and we worked out an agreement where the seller was going to pay the buyer back for their lost wages, because now they had to start all over again, paid for attorney's fees, paid for out-of-pocket expenses like the title search, home inspection, appraisal. We even were able to negotiate the buyer's agent getting paid. Ultimately, the seller messed up. They did not want to sell. So those are the two real situations that come up. We either get reimbursed or we walk away. We get reimbursed and walk away, or we file a lawsuit and force a sale. There is another option, and that is not the common one, and it's just give me my deposit back and we walk away. That's not ideal because as a buyer, you're losing money, and we want to make you whole. If you are buying or selling a home and something doesn't feel right during the transaction, give us a call before you make any major decisions, especially if you're not represented. If you are represented, I can't help you. But if you're not represented, give us a call if it's early in the process and something doesn't sound right. Because understanding your rights early can be the difference between saving your deal and losing it. So I'm going to leave you with 4 lessons today. 1, just because something is signed doesn't mean that it's guaranteed. It's just you committing to the buyer and the seller committing to the buyer and the buyer committing to the seller. It is that simple. We are just saying, these are the terms we're going to be agreeing to. Here's our rules. Here's our guidelines. But unfortunately, sometimes life happens and things happen. We got to, at that point, reevaluate and decide what we want to do. Are we going to force a sale like we did with my first client? Or are we going to just say, reimburse us, we'll go find something else because this isn't worth our headache? You've got to know your options. Now, here's the thing. Changing your mind as a seller is not enough to get you out of a contract. Sellers can't just simply cancel a deal because they regret it or they got a better offer. They can ask and they can try, but they open themselves up to a lawsuit. Now, the reality is most people are not going to sue over a house because it's going to cost you more, right? It has to be a good investment. You have to be getting a good deal, and it has to be something that you're willing to spend a couple $100,000 to fight over. Because unfortunately, you have to pay your attorney out of pocket, and they are charging an hourly rate. It's not a contingency fee. It's not a flat fee. It's going to be an hourly rate. So it does get more expensive. Now, if you're in the buying situation, you do have rights. We can protect them, right? Like I said, we can bring a lawsuit for specific performance, which is expensive, but if it's a property you really like and there's some underlying reason why you need that specific property, sure. Most times we end up negotiating and getting your out-of-pocket expenses covered. Which brings me to my next point. You need to get your attorney involved as soon as possible, right? In order for you to be able to be legally protected, you need somebody in your corner that knows the law and can guide you through that process. That is my job as a closing attorney. My job as a closing attorney is to make sure you understand the law and how it protects you and does not protect you. And in these situations where there is a seller that has changed their mind, it is extremely important that you work with an attorney that understands real estate closings. So if you found this information to be useful and you don't want to be one of our stories, be sure to follow us because every day we share real life situations from real closings so you can have a smooth and stress-free closing. And then watch this video if you'd like to learn some more ways that real estate closings can go sideways and how to protect yourself.